You are listening to the Female Accountant Moms podcast with Dawn Goldberg, CPA. This is episode number 60, Arguing for Your Limitations. Welcome to the Female Accountant Moms podcast, the podcast where busy female accountants who also happen to be moms like you get practical support and solutions you need to have it all, a successful career and a happy family. If you are looking for the solution to overwhelm and mom guilt, if you'd like to feel better and have more balance, as well as learn how to take back control of your life, you've come to the right place. Good morning. Hope everybody's doing well. I hope you had a great week. I just want to give a shout out to all the female accountant moms on LinkedIn. I've been reaching out to so many of you, and so many have been writing back, thanking me for letting you know that this podcast exists just for you. So I'm really, really grateful for the connections that I've been making, and that the work that I'm doing is helping a lot of female accountant moms. So I love that. Okay, so let's get started. This week is episode number 60. Arguing for your limitations. As a working mom, you are no stranger to facing and overcoming many challenges, possibly on a daily basis. And each day you navigate the balancing act of your professional responsibilities with motherhood, trying to keep your career and your family afloat. You've probably accepted and categorized certain things along the way as quote unquote possible or impossible. The beliefs about what's in each of these categories can become so fixed in your mind that anything to the contrary can seem false and even ridiculous. Before you know it, you have a Rolodex of excuses in your mind that can be selected from at a moment's notice. And if you're not sure what a Rolodex of excuses is, it's the catalog you have in your mind that contains all the reasons you've accumulated for not being able to be, do, or have something. These excuses often begin with the phrase, I can't, and are justified with the phrase, because. They will always contain a belief and a justification. So let me give you some examples. I can't get up early to work out because I have to get the kids ready for school. I can't ask for that promotion because I'm not qualified enough. I can't tell her how I really feel because she will be upset with me. I can't say no because they really need me. And author Richard Bach famously said, quote, argue for your limitations and sure enough, they're yours. Repeatedly saying I can't can create such a strong habit of thought, even when faced with the possibility of maybe I can. The more you practice believing that things are what you believe them to be, the more evidence you will find to back up that belief. Before you know it, you are in a cycle of arguing for your limitations and believing that you are just a victim to the circumstances in your life, or worse, that those beliefs are true. So this week I'm going to discuss why it's so easy for you to argue for your limitations and how to stop. So now let's talk about why it's so easy to argue. When you join a belief with a justification, arguing for your limitations can seem effortless. Your brain thrives on keeping things the same and strongly resists change, which is why practice beliefs are so powerful. And since your beliefs started at an early age, it can be difficult to catch a familiar limiting belief. By the time you become a mother, the origin of a belief coupled with a lifetime of justifications will make your limitations seem obvious and irrefutable to you. The term confirmation bias describes this phenomenon where you give unequal weight to any concept that you already believe and often develop elaborate rationalizations even in the face of evidence to the contrary. So basically you fight for your right to be wrong. Now, I'm going to give you an example. What was once the belief, I can't write very well because of a C on a third grade writing assignment, can eventually morph into the limiting belief that I can't possibly start a women's blog. When your limiting beliefs become so fixed in your mind, you may find yourself arguing when someone points out that you might actually be a good writer. I once coached a client who was a super successful financial analyst that worked her way up the ranks of her industry despite not finishing college. However, when challenged to join a dating website specifically for professionals, she argued that she couldn't possibly qualify since she hadn't finished college. Now, the fact that she was a vice president of a prestigious financial firm was inconsequential in her mind. Her firmly held belief that her worth was dependent on whether she finished college or not was practiced for so long that it was the only thing that made sense to her. Interestingly, the need to be right, to prove that your position is logical, and to be fixated on what you consider the truth of your beliefs is what lawyers and accountants are trained to excel at. This means that arguing for your limitations, it might be common practice for you whether the effects of your beliefs are helpful or not. And for example, something so unfamiliar like believing that stress is optional during tax season can be extremely challenging to your accountant's brain. Since your accounting training has prepared you to think logically, then when something challenges that logic, even if it's in your best interest, your accountant's brain will defer to what's familiar. When beliefs are so ingrained and set in stone in your mind, they can appear to be irrefutable truths. So like a lawyer arguing their case to a jury, your brain wants to win its case without concern for how the outcome will affect you in the short or the long term. And since your amazing brain has been absorbing belief systems for so many years, it has become extremely efficient at believing them. It will not question them again unless you do it consciously. So in order to recognize and stop arguing for your limitations, you have to become aware that you may have limiting beliefs, that you need to become aware of how they are affecting you and whether they are serving you or not. You have to begin to see that the key to open the handcuffs you placed on yourself are sitting right in front of you. So now I'm going to talk about how to stop. The last page of every month's O magazine, Oprah has a section titled What I Know for Sure. And this is where she shares a life lesson that she's learned through her trials, tribulations, and successes. And the messages that she shares are thought-provoking and often uplifting. They pass along wisdom that she's learned from her own experiences and from the thousands of people she's come in contact with over her lifetime. So in light of this, I'd like to ask you the following. What do you know for sure, and is it serving you? Do you like the current results you have in your life? How is your career, health, relationship, and finances? How strongly would you disagree or argue if I challenged one of your beliefs about what's possible? So when clients argue for their limitations, it's because they have such a strong need to be right as opposed to being open to the possibility that they might be wrong. It can seem almost painful to challenge a long-held belief, even if that belief isn't serving them. Now, this is where the power of managing your mind is life-changing. When you become conscious of the limitations that you've been arguing for so vehemently, you get to decide what to do about them. The harder your brain wants to hold on to a belief that's not serving you, the more powerful your results will actually be when you do some thought work. And since most of your thoughts are unconscious and they're lurking in the dark corners of your mind, it's important to bring them into the light of awareness. Before you do, it's important to be gentle with yourself. You've probably been practicing your limiting beliefs for quite a while, and it can be super uncomfortable to challenge them. In addition, if you have a limiting belief that others agree with, you may have joined limiting beliefs and have even more justification that this is just the way it is. Once you have a strong belief, you will gravitate towards other people who tell the same story. So, for example, other working mothers may agree that making time for yourself is too difficult and will give you all of their proof for why it's true. And if you spend enough time swapping stories, it can become challenging to believe otherwise, but not impossible. By being aware of how your limiting belief stories are actually not serving you, you can create the momentum to do something about them. Awareness is always the key when it comes to making any change in your life. And once you have the awareness, you can begin to write a new story. Your brain will initially resist and want to give you proof that it's absurd to think differently, but that is completely okay. You are just loosening the grip. So to continue loosening the grip, you just need to practice thinking thoughts about the possibility of something being different. Once you begin practicing those new thoughts, your brain will begin showing you proof that these new beliefs are true. And that, I'm telling you, is when things get really interesting. So when I discovered this work, I decided to apply it to tax season. I had been in public accounting for many, many years, and I realized that I had a lot of limiting beliefs about how normal it was to be very stressed during tax season. Everyone I knew in public accounting was stressed, so it was understandable that this was a general, firmly held belief in our profession. But just because it was accepted didn't mean it was an irrefutable fact. Once I began questioning it, I could see that the story that tax season was just inherently stressful, it wasn't serving me at all. It affected my ability to focus. I was less productive at work than I was at other times during the year. And I was tired and irritable at home. I'm sure many of you can agree. You've experienced this as well. I decided to be open to the possibility that tax season did not need to be stressful, despite years of proof to the contrary. I began working on my thoughts about a month before tax season started and just began challenging the story that my brain kept wanting to tell. What was once the belief that, of course, tax season is stressful became a new belief. It's possible that tax season doesn't need to be stressful. And for weeks, I practiced my new belief, gradually loosening the grip my brain had developed over the years. And thankfully, I guess it was around mid-March, the first year that I started working on my limiting beliefs, my husband actually made the comment, "You don't seem as stressed this year." I have to tell you, I was shocked. I really was shocked that he noticed. But I was so grateful because I knew that what I was experiencing wasn't only in my mind. It wasn't imaginary. Once I saw the effects of my new belief system, and my bosses actually noticed the difference as well, I knew that I could also apply this to any area of my life. I wasn't beholden to a belief system that didn't serve me, and I definitely didn't need to argue for the right to believe in it either. And as for my client that I talked about before, who struggled with joining an online dating site for professionals, we worked on loosening that grip that she had on her story about not finishing college. Whenever she argued for her limiting belief, I kept asking her, yes, but how is that belief serving you? Just by opening up to the possibility that she could tell a different story, she began to let her old belief go little by little. And the amazing thing was that once she saw how she had been arguing for her limitations in this area of her life, she became willing to look at all the limiting beliefs that she had that were negatively affecting her in other areas of her life. So now it's your turn to take a look at that Rolodex of excuses that you have. Begin to start challenging your stories, especially the ones that you argue for and defend that aren't creating the life that you really want. When you stop arguing for your limitations, you get to create a much different experience. And that's an argument worth walking away from. So in summary, your brain thrives on keeping things the same and strongly resists change, which is why practiced beliefs are so powerful. Confirmation bias is where you give unequal weight to any concept that you already believe and often develop elaborate rationalizations even in the face of evidence to the contrary. Since your accounting training has prepared you to think logically, then when something challenges that logic, even if it's in your best interest, your accountant's brain will defer to what's familiar. Since most of your thoughts are unconscious and lurking in the dark corners of your mind, it's important to bring them into the light of awareness. And finally, once you begin practicing those new thoughts, your brain will begin showing you proof that these new beliefs are true, and that's when things can get really amazing. So there you have it. That was episode number 60, Arguing for Your Limitations. So this is honestly some of the most interesting work that I've ever done for myself and for my clients, is to really understand how our accountants' brains work and how we're always looking for the facts, right? We've been trained to look for the facts, and that we think that just because we think something's a fact, that we just assume that that's true. And then we just store it in our brain under this Rolodex of this is a fact. And we practice it and practice it and practice it. And we never pull it out to question it and to really honestly take a look at how the results are in our lives based on those beliefs, those things that we believe to be true. When you take it out and you really apply the Manage Your Mind model to them, and you can see that these are optional. You don't have to believe just because you're surrounded by people that believe it or you've believed something for a very long time. That when you take it out and take a look at it and really see how is that showing up in your life, and to know that it's an optional thought, it's kind of like initially your brain resists it. Like, no, this is a fact. This is true. But when you really take a look at it, and I've worked with so many clients on this, it really is kind of a shock to the system. But once they get over the initial shock, they're like, wait a minute, you mean I don't need to believe this? Or I could believe that this is possibly not true, or, whatever the far out belief that they want to have. And I say, yes, you absolutely can. You have to work on it. But in the end, it is amazing. It really is. The results that you get from changing a limiting belief and from not arguing for your limitations changes everything. I cannot tell you how great it is. So I hope this was helpful. I hope you have a great week, and I'll talk to you guys next week. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you like what you heard, be sure to click subscribe on your podcast app so you never miss an episode. You can also get my 5 simple steps to reduce overwhelm today for free by visiting me over at cpa-moms-coach.com. If you'd like some free coaching around an issue you are experiencing, go over to my website and schedule a free mini session.